Let me just start by saying to Rod and team, thanks very much for having me, for your support and your leadership as part of our 18-county partner group. You will see data up here, and this is a congratulations actually to the community as well. You'll see data up here as we get into it that shows how well you folks have performed. Now, in your market, you know the good work you're doing, but we'll show you on a comparative basis how this community is playing above your weight if you think about weight in comparison to population and number of companies and all that kind of thing. And I think that's in large part due to the culture that you have created here around public-private partnership and commitment to common goals, common ends through collective action and focus. So, so congratulations to you all for creating that environment and making it a priority for the good work that you do. I'm going to hit some highlights on the economy, at least a little bit about how we think about the economy in the region. It'll provide some context for some of the work we're doing. I'm guessing many of you were here last year when we talked about REX. We'll touch on REX and some of the ways our strategies have evolved, and then we'll finish with some more specific comments on results. So as it relates to the economy and how we think about it, the backdrop I think we all have to remember is the strong challenge we have as a region as our economy has changed over the past 35, 40, maybe 50 years. What we are showing here is our region's performance with respect to employment in comparison to the rest of the country. And you can see as you look at that although our employment numbers as a region have grown, we've significantly underperformed relative to the rest of the country over the last 35 or 40 years. And we will talk about REX a little bit, but for those of you who are involved or remember, as a reminder, in REX, we measured from roughly 1990 to this says 2011, it was 12, but the point is this. We grew employment 2% in this region, and the national average was 4%. If you think about that in terms of jobs, the delta there is 400,000 jobs. So growth, but underperformance. At the same time, growth in the context of a significantly transforming economy, where we transform from a worker-based, people-based manufacturing environment to something that is more focused on IT and automation. So that has its own headwinds that are the realities of the environment we've lived in. As a result of a lot of factors, gross regional product, you can see, has experienced the same kinds of challenges, although maybe not as dramatic as we saw in employment. And you can see during the REX period, underperformance as well. If you translate this, let's call it the lost opportunity relative to the U.S., overall, it translates by the math we did to $67 billion of lost opportunity. Real numbers. So a bit of a stark set reality that we've been in an environment where our economy is transitioning. Having said all that, that's a pretty negative message in a lot of ways. The story's not all bad, and I think it speaks to the resilience of the economy, the leadership in the communities that we work in every day. Productivity has gone up dramatically, and we have actually outperformed the U.S. on the basis of productivity. In the media, a lot of times in the public sector, people don't focus on that. The headline numbers are often relating to jobs and gross revenue product. The productivity story is a very good story. And that's something that I think we at Team NEO early on in the REX process have not been highlighting as much. And as we've gotten behind it, we've begun to talk about it a little more. If you drill down in manufacturing, we are still a manufacturing dominant economy. But you can see that productivity has gone up dramatically, well outpacing employment and gross revenue product during this period in manufacturing. So in the context of an economy that is so reliant on it, it's important to know that as a measure of competitiveness, from a manufacturing perspective, we have remained competitive. We're not employing as many people, we're not as big as we were, but we have maintained our global competitiveness and more, which I think is something that we really have to keep our eye on as we continue our work in driving the results we're trying to drive. So that's a bit of a backdrop in how we're thinking about overall the impact of our work and what are the levers we're trying to affect. So a lot of people say, well, what is good economic development? What is a winning strategy in economic development? And so what we have done is spend some time talking to people outside of our region. You often can be infected by your own thought process, to the good or to the bad. And what is good about this slide is that Amy Liu from the Brookings Institution is very well recognized as a thought leader. And so we thought it would be helpful to provide a perspective from Amy Liu. You can see strong economic development practices as evidenced throughout the country exhibit a number of things, including strategies and initiatives that engage stakeholders and partners, efforts that are data-driven, objective, where there is a strong network of people focused on common goals, where each organization is building its capacity, recognizing what it is good at, and working well together, and is inclusive in the broadest sense of inclusion. Let me just stop here and ask you this question. Does this resonate with you? I would submit to you, if you think about what this quote says and the way you do your work, you'll see a lot of commonalities in what you do in this community. And what we're trying to do at Team Neo is identify ways to bring those kinds of same thought processes to a regional effort, and also identify those places where things are working well, helping those who may be struggling to a certain degree, or even to where people are doing it well, making sure they know it, so they highlight it and they do more of it. And that is an opportunity I think we have as an organization that sees 18 different communities. I say 18 different test tubes in a way. It's not too dissimilar to that. And so anyways, that's Amy Liu. As a reminder, REX was an effort that included the business community, a number of thought leaders in the nonprofit world across the region. And at the end of the day, included at least 120 different people in the corporate community, small businesses, large businesses, thought leaders in certain aspects of the nonprofit world, including the fund, which this organization and this community supports very actively, and really said three things at the end of the day. While we've done great things as a community in our region, there are a number of opportunities for us to continue to do things differently, think differently, to accelerate the work we're doing if we were to close that gap, that 2% to 4% gap that we talked about, or the gross revenue product gap. To keep pace with the national average, secondly, we have to find a way to increase the impact of our entire system. What Rex did not say, and what I've learned as I've traveled throughout the community, there's a misconception here. Rex did not say we're doing a bad job. Rex did not say we have organizations that are not strong organizations. What Rex said is we have a lot of organizations who are doing good work, doing a lot of different things, but we're not coordinated as well. So there are many opportunities left on the table, many opportunities to optimize the work we do for greater impact. And that was really the call to action that came out of Rex. And related to that is the third point. Therein lies the opportunity for coordination and alignment across geographies, across sectors, across areas of expertise, so that we leverage the good work, the good minds, the good experience, all the resources we have. If you talk to people in the community about the resources they have, nobody has enough. And if you look at those organizations independently, I think I would probably agree, nobody has enough. But if you begin to think about what we can do together, we have way more resources than we understand, way more expertise than we understand. And where we have been successful in doing a lot of work that maybe would go above and beyond what people would expect, is where we have brought collective effort, collective action, collective resources and thoughts to the table to do great things. And you've seen a number of examples of that in this market. So with that said, what is Team NEO doing to impact that? As a backdrop, let me just say this. As people who may know of Team NEO in the past and really our origin, a lot of people think of Team NEO as an organization that is 100% focused on attraction. And that was true originally. What came out of Rex that is not as well understood is a recognition that while attraction is important, retention and expansion based on the Rex work was identified as one of the biggest opportunities we had. And there was a belief, recognition, and recommendation that there's value in a coordinating body to help bring greater cohesion, effectiveness, best practices to the table by virtue of the ability to look over what people are doing across 17 or 18 different counties. And so so our mission is very much related to attraction and doing what we can do to support the good work that people are doing around retention and expansion throughout the community. Some of the things that Rex identified as critical things to focus on the left side of the screen, identifying best practices for helping people in the community have much more thoughtful, strategic, what I would call topical R&E visits. Leveraging industry expertise and understanding trends in industries to help do that more effectively. Recognizing a lot of people who are making those calls are industry generalists, and yet the companies themselves are looking for more insight as to what their competitors are doing or what kind of economic development assets they can leverage in order to help drive their strategic thinking. And a number of other things you can see here. What we're doing at Team NEO is trying to figure out the ways that we can build capabilities across these areas in industries so that we can help everybody in the different communities leverage those. It is hard for anybody in a given community to get really deep in auto and all the different trends and opportunities that are going on in auto. We have the ability to do that because of the resources we have in research. We have some technological capabilities that others may not choose to invest in. We can do it and leverage it across 17 or 18 different counties and multiple teams throughout the region. We're looking at common ways to measure success. I think the last time we spoke here, we talked about being more data-driven and bringing a common way to define success, identify different metrics that help us measure how we're performing, where there are opportunities, where we can find best practices, where we can identify insights and help people target their activities better. Those kinds of things we are doing, and you can see those on the right side of the page. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about that in detail here. I would say that we started with a recognition, as we spoke about before, that there are a lot of good organizations, of which Wayne Economic Development Corp is one of them, where there are a lot of people doing some really great work, have really great relationships. And so everything we do is geared toward trying to figure out how we can, I call it, fill the white space. Where are our opportunities to bring insights and research and expertise to the table that other people can leverage because they, for whatever reason, it doesn't make sense for them to invest in it. And you can see that, this is a very simple depiction. If you look at the network as we have and said how many organizations in our community, the 18 counties, that have economic development in their mission, how many think there are 50 of them? How many think there are 100? How many people think there are 150? we got to 170. So think about the alignment opportunities. Think about all the people who are touching companies in our region, and think about the opportunities we have if we leverage each other, if we find ways to leverage our capabilities collectively, maybe identify insights we can share at Team Neo across the community. Think about the kind of impact we can have as a result of that. A lot of people ask us, so what's the difference between what you do and what one of your partners like this organization does? And as I say, we try and find the white space. We try and find the opportunities where we can leverage the data that we've collected around the activity going on, where we can leverage industry knowledge or other types of resources that maybe Jobs Ohio brings to the table as they are driving industry-oriented strategies. Things that we can do across the network that leverage your expertise at the local level, the relationships you have, the local knowledge about specific needs of companies and industries in these markets, et cetera. And do it in a way that says there are some things that we ought to be leading on. There are some things that we have the luxury of building across a range of communities or a range of industries that maybe don't make sense to be done locally. But there are a lot of things that are done locally that we ought to just support the hell out of. Relationships, knowledge of what's going on in different municipalities and counties and programs and things like that. So we're trying to find the white space so that we complement everything that you do, while also coordinating, bringing consistency and effectiveness to and insights to many things we do. And we're trying to do it across both attraction and R&E. This is a bit of a busy slide, but it's an example of the kinds of things that we have brought to the table in bringing new thought process to some of the work our partners have done. This is an example of what we did with Stark County. It turns out in Stark County there are about 61,000, based on a database that we had, 61,000 companies with specific names. 6,100 specific names. And we then said, how do we focus on 6,100 names? And we looked by NAICS codes. We said, in the driver industries, in the 6 industries where we're strongest, what are those companies? And then we worked with Steve Paquette, our partner there, and said, of those 971, which are the ones that are the most likely to be growth-oriented, need some sort of strategic intervention, where we can collectively bring capabilities to the table to help them grow. And he ended up choosing about 20 names, and then he committed with partners in the region to call on, I think it was 60 or 70 names, 5 of which are automotive focused. So now we're saying to ourselves with Steve, how do we bring automotive industry insights and some of the other capabilities we have to the table to help him make those calls, help them support those companies? There's a corollary to that as we think about attraction, although the challenge is much greater when we think about attraction, because there are any number like 2 million plus companies, so the question is how do you focus on that? But we're doing some things in that area to help get us to where we need around focusing on the right opportunities, bringing our capabilities to the table collectively, where they can have greatest impact on the companies who are trying to grow, have a growth strategy, and have some sort of obstacle to what they're trying to do. We're thinking about this from a strategic perspective. As we think about it, there are a number of things that companies are looking for from their partners in the economic development world. Strategic advice, operational advice, etc. And as we think about what that means at the point of delivery, it can mean a lot of different insights. This one happens to be oriented toward auto as another example. But there are a lot of different things that we can collectively bring to the table about what's going on in automotive around autonomous cars, alternative energy, other types of solutions there, certainly related to additive manufacturing and the impact that could have on their operating costs. Everybody's talking about workforce and labor issues and things like that. So we are thinking about the different things, the different capabilities we can build that we can bring to the table to help our partners in each community engaged in dialogue around these types of issues. And we're also looking at the data that we're gathering about the activity to identify new ways to focus our research and our work in support of the opportunities. We have two examples here. The top one is actually very pertinent to this group, because what Rex said is there are six industries that that really drive our economy. Well, you know, if you're in Cuyahoga County, those six would likely be the same six. If you're sitting here, it's not the same six. In fact, what we found as we get into the work, that one of the biggest drivers of your economy here is food processing. It's not one of the six. So how do we then think about the capabilities that we can bring to the bear to augment your work, to recognize that in this community and a few others around here, food processing is a driver industry, and we have to find a way to support that. Similarly, Rex did not identify distribution and logistics as a driver industry, and yet if you look at our data last year, we did 9 projects in distribution and logistics, which caused us to say, well, wait a minute, what are we doing? If that's true, what more should we be doing to understand distribution, logistics, industry drivers in support of our partners in the region, to see if we can drive more collective impact through that. And we've begun to do so as a result. So those are just a couple of examples. Some people here may be familiar with Nortec. Nortec is a group of people who merged with us around the time I joined. That consists of what is now 5 or 6 professionals who are incredibly deep in some very technical aspects of innovation. Smart materials, energy storage, additive manufacturing. So what we've been doing is saying to ourselves, how do we leverage them as an economic driver? Instead of them being focused on working with small companies on a consultative basis, helping them, you know, sort of on a one-on-one basis grow, how do we leverage them to help identify opportunities to create more new market activity, new customer activity, and therefore leverage them as a growth driver? And what this depicts is an interesting process that we've begun to develop that is actually starting to bear some fruit. We call it the seeker-solver model. But if you own or sell in a small company today, you know identifying the right person in a large company who's trying to figure out what the next new technology innovation is going to be in one of their most important products. You know it's really hard to figure out right person, right time with the P&L responsibility and ability to pull the trigger in order to get you the right access so you can get a really effective sale. What we have done here is said we can do that in a much more efficient way. And I'll give you one example with one large company in the region who was thinking about the next generation family of products. We showed them 20 companies that had capabilities in about 6 or 7 different technology areas and interest in learning more about what those companies can do for them. Through a sort of a question and answer process where we brought some ideas and then subsequently some meetings with a smaller subset of those companies, we introduced 5 companies to that large company who ultimately will likely build new technology from those smaller companies into their new products. A much more efficient way to do it. Certainly, I call that economic development nirvana, where we connect small companies with large companies to find real solutions. And we did that through some very good technical expertise that our partners have. So the seekers, the large companies looking for solutions, and the solvers, the small companies who are looking for better access, got a really high value opportunity to exchange ideas. So how many companies do you have in this market who are looking for some sort of opportunity related to that? Our guys were able to do that because of their special knowledge and expertise. We do a lot of research and marketing. There's some examples here, but what I'd like you to take away from a slide like this is that we're building really good content about things that matter to companies in the region and to companies outside of the region who we're trying to introduce to the assets that we have here. These happen to be oriented towards mostly the metals industry and automotive, but they touch on things like wage rates. They touch on things like supply chain information, who's in the market, who's not. They touch on different reasons why people would want to do business here and why their company would be stronger, better, more effective if they were part of the local supply chain. And those are things we do to help people see and believe that if they're outside of the region, they need to be here, and if they're here, we want to make sure they continue to invest here. And then there's a broader, if you follow it at all, there's some broader work we do from a marketing perspective on Cleveland Plus. When I joined about a year ago, I may have told this group I got a lot of solicited and unsolicited advice. All of them said, don't mess with Cleveland Plus. Cleveland Plus is good. And so that sounded good to me. I'd seen it before, and I sort of agreed with that. But I said to our team, show me the data. And the data's up in the right-hand corner. What we have shown through research year in and year out is we have a 2x, almost a 2.5x times better positive share of voice than our next closest peer. The peers here include St. Louis, Nashville, Cincinnati, Columbus, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and maybe one other that I'm not thinking about. So when Cleveland is mentioned, or when Northeast Ohio is mentioned, or Akron is mentioned in the trade press, we are 2.5 times more likely to have a positive mention than all our other. And that's a result of a lot of the good work that our Cleveland Plus team does, not only with our web presence, but they're actively courting the business press community in New York, Washington, and even over in London. Who's in London, European news is in particular more and more interested in what's going on here in the United States. So that's what we're doing. At the end of the day, we're trying to drive, economic results. And if we go back to Rex, what did Rex say the goal is? The goal is to close the gap. By our math, the gap was 155,000 jobs. And the goal was to do everything we could to close that gap over 10 years. That translates to, on a net basis, 15,000 net new jobs a year. Now, we don't try and take on that whole 15,000 net new jobs. But what the data shows is we're on an upward trend. In the last 2 years, we've been a smidge under 15,000 net new jobs. So we're on the right trajectory. We need to accelerate the success. And what we try and do through our work is measure the things we can do in the traded sectors, manufacturing, and in the service sectors. Those things that we can directly impact through our work at Team Neo, our partners' work, including our work with Jobs Ohio to drive a very large piece of that ultimately has resonance through the rest of the community. And as you can see, based on the data, we're on the right track. We focus on ultimately four success factors. Number of project wins. We are not trying to necessarily dictate what a good project is or a bad project. What we want it to be is impactful to the strategic outcomes of the organization. As you can see, in the first half of the year, we did 46. Our full year goal is around 76. So we are on the right path to that. Jobs created, it's always a headline. We have to keep focus on it. Our goal is 4,500. Now this is for the whole system. So this would be us and our 17 partners. Our goal is 4,500 for the year. And our best look right now, based on what we see, we think we're going to surpass that. And we feel very good in a number of ways around the reasons for that. I think a lot of it is improved focus from the whole system on identifying projects where we can make an impact and working hard to pull them through so we get closed projects and outcomes more quickly, and therefore companies benefit more quickly as a result. Payroll ultimately matters. You can see that our goal there is about our goal is about 200 million of incremental payroll, and we think we will surpass that as well as a result of the good work that our collective partners are doing. And then finally, CapEx. Our goal here is 800 million, and we're going to be well over that. We benefited from one very large energy project this year outside of Youngstown that really is important for the region, and so we should very much beat that. So that's what we're doing, sort of from a regional perspective. There's a little bit of a busy slide here. The specifics aren't as important. I said earlier that this organization is playing above their weight, and what's interesting, if you look at it on the basis of weight, number of population, number of companies, etc., you would be on the right side of each one of these graphs. But you can see when you look at performance, wins, jobs created, payroll, capital investment, you're on the left side of the graph, which suggests that on the basis of weight, well and beyond, you're performing well and beyond what other parts of the region are doing. We look at the data on a county by county basis because it's the easiest way to do it. Most of our partners are county focused, not all. So there's some bleeding in between counties in terms of activities and some of this. But you know, instinctively, my guess is you're proud of the results, and you should be. I can tell you based on relative performance, very, very strong. And then finally, I'll make a couple of observations. A few important wins recently here. You're very familiar with them. But they're very, very, very impactful for the region. And what is common when you look at the projects themselves and the interaction within the project teams, the high degree integrated work, capabilities that were brought to the table between cities, counties, our team, Jobs Ohio. And you know, if you go back to the Amy Lou slide, our teams exhibited a lot of those important characteristics. Why are you successful? You know better than I, but I'll give you the outsider's view. There's, I said before, a very strong bias here towards public and private partnership, doing it together, doing it right with a common purpose, common goal in mind. You know, it strikes me that you have very strong relationships by virtue of the fact that you have 90 or so people here today at 7:30, 7:45. Some people knocking on the door before the gates open. Says that this is an organization who and community that cares about the community, and as a result, that trickles through in the work that you do. And in a lot of the meetings that we're in with Rod and team, if he is any example of what you folks are like at all, outcomes matter. Let's focus on the important stuff, and let's get all the other, you know, extracurricular, you know, information or, you know, things that aren't important out of the way, and let's focus on common ends. And that's what you do and do well. If I would have an ask of this group, I would say there's so much more we can do. And I want to find ways to highlight the good work you do and leverage that from a leadership perspective in other parts of the community. So to the extent we reach out to you and ask you for your help, please be willing to engage in that regard. And then and do that in the context of the broader regional outcomes we're trying to maintain. And then you saw some of the capabilities we're trying to build. The capabilities, they're not cheap. We have some very good people who are doing some very good work. But if we don't leverage the expertise we build from an industry perspective, from a macroeconomic research perspective, then you know, you're an investor in us through the Fund for Economic Future. Your money is being wasted, and our opportunity collectively is being wasted. And we would embrace the challenge that we get from our partners of what more can we do, or if we do some work that we think is good, and for whatever reason it's not resonating with people in the community, you got to tell us. We'll stop doing it, or we'll do it differently so that we get to the outcomes that we want. And I would say, given the good work that this community has done, the credibility and voice that you have in doing that may be greater than you know, and we would value that voice. So I'll stop there. If I have a few minutes for questions, I'll take them. But thank you so much for the opportunity to tell you again what we're doing. We're proud of the work we're doing. I'm proud of the team, the immediate team we have at Team NEO, and I'm proud of the way our partner organizations are growing together. But we just have a lot more to do. So thank you. So any questions? Yes.
I was going to give somebody else a chance. So you mentioned one of your comments was that one of your one of the things you identified as a new strategy is not focusing on attraction, but on growth and retention. But a lot of your performance indicators are very much on that attraction side, like investment dollars, increased payroll. So what are you seeing or in the future as some of the performance indicators to show how you're doing on retention and growth?
So, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm not sure I was as clear as I could be. Everything, all the data here is a combination of attraction, retention, and expansion. Okay, so on a combined basis, if you look at attraction versus retention and expansion year in and year out, we would be 14-ish% of our projects would be attraction. Sorry, not 14, 24 would be attraction. All the rest would be retention and expansion. Now, when you start doing that, you start getting into really interesting, data definition questions. If a large company who is already here brings a whole new division here, you tell me whether that's expansion or attraction. I don't really care. It's 300 new jobs. Let's get after it. So that's how we think about it. I would say this from a thematic and market perspective. Here's what we're seeing. People outside of the United States, there seems to be a lot of interest in the United States, and particularly from economies like Germany, China, the UK until the whole Brexit thing, but maybe that'll as things settle, that'll grow in our economy. And I think what's happening there is people are saying, if we look around the world and see what kind of opportunities we have on a relative basis, the U.S. looks better. And so more and more people are thinking about what can we do in the U.S. And so we've seen some decent flow in that regard. It's earlier, it's longer tailed because attraction tends to take longer from a pipeline perspective, but that's what we're seeing there. The other thing we're seeing, and you saw this here, I think, I would guess in the Luke example, I wasn't part of the discussions, but I'll just assume this is part of the dynamic. As companies are looking for ways to manufacture earnings in a low growth environment, they're looking at consolidation as a way to do that. That can cut both ways, right? I mean, people can consolidate away from our market, or as in the case of Luke, they can consolidate in our market. And recently what we found is people are consolidating here. They're seeing the strength of the companies here. They're seeing the quality of the labor force that is here. They're seeing the cost basis, they're seeing the quality of life, and for those reasons, they're saying this is a place they want to continue to invest. We need to work on the workforce issues because labor pool depth is a concern across the country, but those are the kinds of the themes. Yes?
I was thinking about regionalism. Everybody supports regionalism, but they sure want to have that new plant, new jobs in their city or county. So how do you get like a Summit County or a Cuyahoga County to embrace a Daisy plant in Worcester or Smucker's latest acquisition as a win for them? I mean, it seems to be the challenge of regionalism.
Thanks for the question. I think it's one of the hardest things that we have to deal with. But here's how I think about it. Economic development is a competitive game by nature, and I say this respectfully. A lot of public sector leaders were put in their jobs because the voter said, we need you to help me deal with the tax base. So I get the motivation. At the same time, we are a region that is highly interconnected, and people travel from one community to the next to go to work and vice versa. So there is value in supporting a regional strategy. And having worked outside of Northeast Ohio and run teams outside of Northeast Ohio, I know that people who are outside of Northeast Ohio, they don't really care about Akron or Canton McKinley or St. Ignatius High School or east side, west side of Cleveland, all that stuff. What they care about is in Northeast Ohio, there's a very rich specialty chemical industry, large companies, small companies, educational institutions, universities that have done. So how do we sell that? Which takes me to really the broader question of how do we think more strategically about how we sell a region and the merits of our region as an economic development asset, and recognize that if we do that really well, Canton will benefit, Akron will benefit, Cleveland will benefit, Wayne County will benefit. We may, on any given day, any community may lose one, they also may win one. But at the end of the day, a stronger regional economy in the industries that we're rich in and where we're developing strong supply chains, we will all benefit, and that's what we're really trying to do. Because people are moving. People are traveling more than 5 minutes to work every day. In some cases, they're traveling an hour. In some cases, they're traveling 30 minutes, so they're going from one county to the next and vice versa. We have a lot of assets here. We got to leverage them. That's the argument that I would make.
Thanks.
Yes?
On one of your slides, you had talent improvement as one of the things that you support the region with. I direct a local county Ohio East jobs, and so we do a lot of talent recruitment as well. What can Team Neo do to help us in that endeavor? Our unemployment rate's down below or at 4% the last few months. It's been more difficult to find labor for the opportunities that are available.
Have you heard about the work that Jobs Ohio is doing in this area?
Well, to what extent?
So, okay. So,
I know about our job matching software that we have.
yeah. So this is an area that Jobs Ohio identified, I don't know, a year ago. And we have a gentleman who we just hired 2.5 months ago named Mike Stanton, who you should meet. If you give me your card, we'll make sure this happens. But the whole idea is this. If you are in a company and trying to deal with some of these labor-oriented issues, it's a little bit of alphabet soup in sort of figuring out how do you leverage, at least this is the feedback that we get, how do you leverage state, local, nonprofit institutions who are doing some really, really good work around the labor and workforce development issues. So Jobs Ohio is building a coordinated effort throughout the state, of which Mike is a member of that group, member of our team, to help be what I would call a concierge partner to companies in the region, to help them navigate the various organizations and community colleges and all the kinds of programs that are available. There's a strong feeling in the business community that we've heard is it's just really confusing to figure out who does what, who does it well, how do we engage with them, how do we make sure we know who our partner in those organizations are, and make sure those people are owning our day-to-day issues. And so it can be confusing to people. And so what we're trying to do is figure out where the white space is for us to bring coordination and thought leadership to that, so that we can leverage effectively the capabilities that are out there, which are deep. They're just hard to navigate. We're not trying to duplicate anything. We're just trying to figure out who's doing what and how we can bring those insights to companies who are trying to access them. Yes?
To what extent do you see immigration as a solution to his question?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm not an expert on it, but what I have learned is, although it's an opportunity, it is also a bit of a legal challenge, and it's an area that at least if you're familiar with Global Cleveland, it's an area that they're involved in. We are not as deep in it, recognizing that that's not an area that we can do well. We will leverage our partners to do that, but there are any number of reasons why we ought to be, I think, open to attracting more talent here in certain job categories in particular, or with certain levels of technical expertise that we're not producing as well as we could or should. But I'm just not an expert in it. I would support any sound policy to do it, and I think there are a lot of people who would, but we're just not deep in it. So I don't mean to pun it, but that's kind of how I think about it. Yes?
I guess just to follow on that a little bit, when we look back at the original slide where we're looking at the growth of our economy in relation to the United States, I would think that if you were looking at population growth as well, you would see a similar trend. Our state's population has grown rather anemically, whereas nationally it's been growing quite well. Maybe outside of the immigration side of it, taking a look at maybe interstate movements, what type of industries, I'm kind of wondering about things like the financial sector, technology sector, what type of industries are you finding that are most likely to maybe pull people into the region from other states perhaps?
So the driver industry, the 6 industries where we are strongest, I would say would be the ones who would most likely, but it may mean different types of jobs. It may mean different types of skills. So take financial services, which I know, the major headwind in financial services would be the substitution of technology for, say, people in a branch, right? If you are older here, like I am, you probably go into a branch fairly often. If you are younger, you maybe you've never been into a branch except when you opened up your account. Now that has its implications from a workforce issue as banks reduce the number of branches and the tellers in the branch. So does that mean that we're doomed in the financial services industry? We happen to have a very rich financial services industry in our region. I would say no. One of the things that, one of the opportunities we have is leveraging the fact that we have a lot of operational capabilities here in our region. We have very strong operational capabilities in insurance companies here, certainly in banks, and we have a rich history because of the number of banks and brokerage firms we used to have here in the compliance area. So how do we think about the back office now and leverage the skills, the capabilities, the educational attainment opportunities that we have here in our community to think differently about the kinds of jobs we have here? That's one example. You could do the same kind of thing as you think about especially chemical and research roles and things like that. So thank you for your questions. Thanks for your support. Let me stop there so I don't control your agenda. But we very much value the opportunity to keep you updated. We thank you for your financial support, and let us know what we're doing well, and let us know what more we can do to support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for sharing your insights. We're proud of the work that we do here in Wayne County and our performance over the many years, and we're happy to be a part of the regional effort. As you know, we've been a strong partner in the fund, Team Neon, pretty much the fund since its inception. And we think it's really important that we're connected in the region, and we want to continue to have opportunities to talk about where we fit into the regional strategy, how we balance our self-interest with those of the region, as Bob talked about. They're both important, and it's probably your hardest job is to balance those. So thank you all for attending this morning. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Scuppers, glad to have you here this morning. Jared, good luck to you in your new position. Happy to have you here this morning as well. Enjoy the rest of your day.